What are your biggest concerns about the future?
I have great concerns truly about the increase in crime. And this doesn't have to do with pointing fingers at the sheriff locally they do a great job. It's a lifestyle that I see perpetuating itself. And if I look at my own kids, as you know, I'm a mom too, if I look at my own kids and growing up, and seeing what's happening in our criminal justice system, in our criminal system, and seeing the increase of drugs and the accessibility of drugs. And the drugs tend to change as time changes. You know, we've gone from marijuana to cocaine and heroin, and then now it's methamphetamine. And now what I see almost daily is here locally in Fort Wayne, the methamphetamine labs. And I'm very concerned in the future here in Allen County, because although we have a phenomenal drug force with our city police officers and county police officers and prosecutors and judges, that's not the issue. The issue is, when I look down the road, the problems we are facing is truly our criminal, I guess, the increase in criminal activity because of the breakdown of the family. The majority, I would say 98% of the criminals or the offenders that I sentence in criminal court, there is a complete lack of social, familiar relationships.
So what change needs to happen to turn things in the right direction?
I really think that one of the ways we can make change, even as a community, is to ensure everybody gives back their time, some philanthropic way, in youth programs or in other programs where we're helping those that maybe can't always help themselves. These are the areas that if I were to talk to somebody that says, well, how can I help the criminal justice system? How can I help to make change? We have got to start with our youth. We've got to start as they grow up, and as we see the breakdown of the family, and we see the traditional family, and we see maybe that there are children and youth struggling, especially in the high school arena, where maybe they only have one parent, and that parent's working full time. I think as a community, it is our obligation to reach out and try to support and educate some of these youth before they get into a life of crime, before they get into my courtroom, and then now they're hurting my community, and I don't have any other option but to sentence them accordingly, because the community's safety is my #1 priority.
So is there a relationship between crime rates and a poor economy?
Absolutely. And here's where I see it. Oftentimes a lot of the offenders I see in my courtroom, people want to say, well, are they mostly minorities? Are they white? Are they black? I mean, where do they come from? And my response is typically, it's not so much of a racial issue, it's a socioeconomic issue. Because when people are desperate, I mean, when you hear that, I know this sounds cliche-ish, but in desperate times calls for desperate measures. I can't tell you how many people come in to the courtroom and try to explain to us why they're stealing, try to explain to us why they're dealing drugs. And although as criminal court justices, we're not going to have any tolerance for that, because you don't get to break the law because of hard times. But what that does show is that when people can't work, when people can't find a job or education, I mean, when it's harder and harder to get an education, now not necessarily a high school degree, but it gets more expensive to go to, look at the expense of going to college these days. If you can't afford to go to college, then people tend to turn to, oftentimes they start with alcohol or maybe getting high, which are gateway drugs to harsher things. So I think the economy drives a lot of our rise in criminal activity, because people feel hopeless. And when they feel hopeless, they do things that maybe they wouldn't otherwise do.